This video is the ultimate guide to the Headrush Gigboard. So we're going to start the video by going over some of the physical features of the Gigboard. And then we can start going over the mindset of how you can use the 4 switches across the bottom to make it through a whole set and get every single sound that you need. So what we have on the face of the unit is a master volume and a push to enter knob. So we can scroll back and forth, and you can see that I can change rigs with that, which is really fun. And then we do have 4 switches across the bottom here that has view, hands-free, looper, and the tuner. So these are the functions that we can access by holding down the switch. All right, and we'll go over more on that later. And looking on the back of the unit here, we have an input, we have an expression, and we have a toe. We have a left and right mono, we have an external amp, and we have headphones. Then we have effects send and return, a MIDI in, a MIDI out through, USB, and then the power adapter. So as you can see on the back of the unit, there are some functions that have been eliminated that you do see on the Headrush pedal board, but you also see some functions that have been added because of external amp. You can change your amp channels, and you can also use an external expression controller to access the toe functionality as well as adding parameters to your expression. Alright, so now let's go ahead and look at the screen and see what has changed from the pedal board to the Gigboard. Alright, so I'm going to go to all rigs here. I'm going to hit the ... just like you would normally. I'm going to hit new rig. Okay, so far nothing really has changed. But as we start building the rig, you're going to see a few different nuances here and there, okay? So we're going to choose an amp. So you're going to have all the same amps in here just like you would on the other board. So let's just make something clean. And I'm going to go to a preset that I've already made. And there's a TW bass clean. Alright, so as you can see here that we have the amp and cab in the rig just like normal. But as soon as you tap on any of the effects blocks, you can see that we don't have the 3 knobs across the edge to change our parameters. So what they've done is we can actually just take a parameter and move it with our finger up and down like that. Which is actually really, really cool, and it'd be neat if they could implement that into the pedal board itself. And it just gives you another option of like, do you want to use the knobs or do you want to use your finger to slide across the screen? So that is really cool. And then if there's more than, more parameters that you can see on one screen, they'll give you a little arrow down here. So let's see what the cab gives us. And let's go ahead and add in a reverb. We'll double tap on that. You can see that we can have the time, size, color, mix, tails on or off, just like you normally would. And I'm trying to find something that has a lot more details. Let's do a bucket brigade. Okay, and even this is still all on one screen. I'll eventually find an effect that actually has more parameters that can fit on the screen, and I'll actually show you. But for now, you still get all the same stuff, but it's all on one screen. You got the sync on and off, which is cool. Tails on, off, hiss on, off. And you can just take your finger and slide things back and forth. Okay, so it's pretty quick and intuitive to change your rig parameters or your effect type parameters all from the screen without having to have the 3 knobs across the edge. All right, so that's really cool. And as far as building rigs and maximizing the inputs and outputs, I've already gone over that in the pedal board video. But let me just quickly glance at a few things that you should probably know about. All right. So the first thing is you can see that the in and the out are in slightly different places. We do have the in this normal area, but the out is more on the right side instead of being on the bottom. And then our tail and different rig view configurations are on the top right hand corner instead of being on the bottom where they were. Okay. What you also get is 4 LED blocks across the bottom of the screen that's going to show you what is on the switches itself. So if you're in Rigs View, it'll show you the rigs. If you're in, Stomp View, you can obviously see the stomps or whatever else. All right, if we go into the ... we can see we can still go to hardware assign. The big difference that we do have between these blocks in the hardware assign is you can only go from toggle to scene. You can't actually do a hold function, which on the pedal board you can take a switch and you can actually hold it, and the effect will only be on while you hold down the switch. But on the gig board you can't really do that. So you just have scenes and you have toggle, okay? So if you want to have some scenes within a certain rig, and I'll show you how to maximize those here in a little bit, okay? We do have external amp, which we can change with our toggle wheel to none, tip, ring, and both. And that's it for that one. And we do have the classic and advanced modes, and we can assign the range of whatever parameter that we're assigning to the expression switch, okay? So if you go back out, we can go to our global settings, and you see that we only have 2 pages here. And we are a little bit more limited on the gig board as far as ins and outs. So we do have the main output level. We can set the line or amp, effects return level, rack or stomp, USB audio settings. That's if you're going to use the gig board for audio recording. And then we do have assignments, auto assign, auto off. So it just means when you insert a new effect block into the rig, it can auto assign that new effect block to an open switch. All right. But if you don't want that, you just set it off and then you're good to go. All right. We do have expression pedal, external amp, toe switch. We have a latch and a momentary, pedal polarity, external amp polarity. And depending on what kind of amp you have and the style of switching that you need, you can mess around with the normal and inverted options for that. We do have the MIDI settings, MIDI through, receive MIDI clock and program change, and the MIDI channel. And reminders, confirm, saved, unsaved. You can do that on the pedal board as well. But that's pretty much all you get for page 1. And then page 2, we have a global EQ, which you have on and off. You have a level. Then you have a multi-band option. You can adjust different parameters. And you also have the Alt Rig Footswitch View. And then you can also have the color modulation. So we can change the colors from, blue and red, going back to multicolor kind of things. You can apply this to LED. You can have that on. And also it shows you the looper remaining time. I'm going to go over the Alt Rig Footswitch View here in a little bit when I show you how to organize your rigs in a certain set list. But you notice that we don't have an alternate output source like we do on the pedal board. And the reason for that is we only have 1/4 inch outs. We don't have XLR outputs, and we only have 1/4 inch outputs. And you also notice that we don't have a separate volume control for the main output and also the headphone out, which would be really, really nice if they added that in there eventually. Because I do like having my master volume control what's going to front of house. And then having an alternative output section to control the volume of, like, say, the headphones or the auxiliary input or anything like that. So even though this is a slightly limited version of the Headrush pedal board, there's still some workarounds you can do. But just know that as of right now, you can't control the separate volumes for the headphones and the master outputs. Okay, let's go ahead and start building some rigs here. And if you're brand spanking new to the gig board, this will definitely help kind of get the right mindset that you need in order to organize your rigs across 4 switches and be able to access everything you need within a set list or maybe a recording session or maybe just jamming around at the house. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with the elements I have in this rig right here. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. All right, so I'm just going to make this clean. I'm going to call this Gigboard. So there's my first rig. And from there, what I like to do is go to the 3 lines and hit New Set List. I'm going to say Save Gigboard Ultimate. Alright, so now we have our set list created. And I'm going to go to the very bottom here. I have a lot of custom rigs that I've made. And of course, it's in alphabetical order. So any new rig that you create always shows up at the very bottom of your full rig selection, okay? So I'm going to go to Clean Gigboard and then go ahead and add that in. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit Save. And then back arrow. And I'm going to go find the set list I want to be in. So I'm just going to scroll through here and I'm going to click Gigboard Ultimate. So what happens when you put all your rigs in a set list, as long as you're within that set list, any new rig that you make will automatically be added to the set list. So that's a feature that I really like. It saves me from having to go and search for other rigs that I've made, and because this is going to be my personal set list for maybe a rock show or maybe a country gig or maybe a wedding that you're playing or wherever else that you like to play. And we're trying to organize our thoughts and how we can get these rigs in a certain order to where we can access all the tones that we need. So I'm going to call this my clean rig here. And let's go ahead and see what our volume is and just listen to the overall tone, okay? Alright, very cool. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and say I like that. But I'm going to hit Save and then Save New Rig. And now at this point, I've essentially made a brand new rig. So we're not talking about scenes and we're not talking about stomps. We're going from one rig to the next. And what you can do with that is, let's say in your clean rig, you like using a Fender Bassman amp like I'm currently doing. But in your rhythm rig, you like using a Bogner, or maybe you like using the MS-30, which is a matchless amplifier, or any other amp that we have of our choosing. So in this rhythm rig, let's just say for fun that I'm actually going to go in, I'm going to change the model to something that's a J45. All right, the cab link is on because I just switched it on. So now we're gonna, now let's add in a different cab. We're gonna make this be, let's just use a preset that I've made before, and I'll go ahead and save that. And sometimes for rhythm you want some delay, sometimes you don't. In this instance, I'm just gonna go ahead and delete it and be done with that. And let's just see what we got here. Alright, so we can hear that the volume is a little bit lower than where it needs to be. So we can actually go into the amp settings here. And let's say, alright, I want my rhythm to be a little bit more crunchy than my clean. So I'm going to raise the volume of the normal and the high volumes on the amp. Alright, not too bad, but let's make it a little bit more crunchy. Alright, very good. I don't like the mix on the reverb, so let's turn that down. Alright, great. And let's actually go in and turn the bass down a little bit. Turn down the treble. Like that. So now what we can do is I'm actually going to go to Rig View, and you can see that we have a clean and we have a rhythm. All right, I can actually go in here. Let's say I want to edit the rig name, so let's go Rhythm Gigboard, because why not? And I'm going to go to my output source here, and I'm going to check the green bars to see how high they go. Alright, cool. I like that. Then I'm going to go back to clean. Alright, let's just adjust the mix of our reverbs here. So I can either touch and then move it with my wheel, or I can just take my finger and slide it down. Whichever way you decide you want to do it. You can do it both ways if you want, it doesn't matter. Alright, we're going to check the output of this. Alright, that's not too bad. I'm actually going to go and raise the amp gain just a little bit. And let's actually change the mic on this to a U87. So you can see so far that we have two totally separate rigs that have different parameters, different effect types, and different microphones, different cabs, all kinds of fun stuff. Okay, so you can kind of see where we can go with this. So I got that volume set really good on that one. Let's just switch between the two rigs and check and make sure the balance of the volumes are about the same, okay? Alright, very good. So there's a big difference in tone going from the clean to the rhythm. But if you want to keep the same kind of tone, then you want to make sure you keep the same type of amp as well. So if you want to use a Tweed Bassman, for instance, for 4 different rigs, but just have different levels of dirt, then you can do that as well. If the next 4 rigs you want to use a Marshall amp or you want to use them as a boogie, you can totally do that, all right? So now let's actually go in and say, let's make a new rig based off of the rhythm. And I'll say save new rig. And this is going to be a lead Gigboard. All right, you can see that shows up right here. And we're actually going to crank up the volume a little bit. All right, very good. And let's actually add some delay on this one. We'll do a dyne delay just in mono. We can double tap. We can change our mix and see what happens. All right, our feedback is up pretty high. All right, very good. And for any lead tone, I do like using the green JRC. I use my dark screen preset and change that to green, which it should be in the first place. And this is what we get with that. All right, very good. And let's say the last one I want to make is going to be based on the clean. So I'll hit save new rig, and then we're going to make this a wet patch. I like to have at least a clean, a rhythm, a lead, and then some kind of ambient wet sound, okay? So I'm going to base this on the clean amp within the rig. That sounds good. We'll go ahead and crank up the time and the mix a little bit. We'll make the size all the way up. All right, great. So there's our 4 patches here. And if we go into the hardware sign, we can actually change the color. So let's just say For my ambient, I want to be purple. All right, you can see that changed the purple. And then for my lead, I want this to be orange. And then my rhythm, I would like to be orange as well. We'll save that. And then my clean, I want that to be, let's just have that be blue, like that. All right, so there you go. I got clean, rhythm, lead, and wet. And since we already did the gain staging for the first two initial rigs, that means the outputs of our last two rigs we just made should be about the same, okay? You can always go back and double check that if you want. But these are 4 rigs that I can use for any situation that I want, okay? All right, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to make some more rigs, okay? So let's say you want some rigs that are based on a verse, chorus, bridge, and a solo section of a song. So we can go ahead and do that. So we can go ahead and make, say, the verse is going to have, I'm going to use some block presets here just to save time. Let's do a tweed bassman clean. This is what that sounds like. Okay, this is actually a crunch. Let's go back to our tweed bass clean here. Let's just make it a little bit more crunchy. Alright, so let's say a certain song in the verse has a stone phaser. Alright, we'll just make this default mono, and we'll make the rate nice and slow and the depth about right there. Alright, and that's fun. And this is going to be verse. And this is where we come into the global settings alternate rig Footswitch view. So if I have it off, you can see that the middle 2 switches don't really allow you to bank up and down, okay? But if I go back and turn that on, now you can see it says previous bank and next bank. So that's what we want to do in this case, is we want to hit next bank and just kind of hold for a few seconds, about 2 seconds or so. And now we can see our verse gigboard patch right here. And I'm going to go ahead and choose that rig. And let's check the output. I'm going to go into my cab. I'm going to crank up the amp gain. Now in the pedalboard video, I use the output gain to adjust my overall rig volume. And someone made a comment saying, well, you can really do this or that or whatever. So I'm just going to use the amp gain this time, okay? But if you really wanted to, you could just adjust the rig volume overall, and that would accomplish the same thing. For right now, I'm just going to keep it at 0 and use the elements within the rig itself to raise or lower the overall volume of that rig. All right? You can do whatever you want. So let's check the rig output volume. All right, that's great. So when I really dig into the strings, it's going to get closer to 0 if I play nice and light. All right, cool. And that sounds good. And let's just add a little bit of reverb to this. And let's use the air verb. And I got some presets in here that I can use. All right, great. And then let's say the chorus goes from super clean to very heavily saturated. So we're going to go new rig. I'm going to go to amp, and I'm going to get some presets down here I've already made. And we're going to go to a M2 dock lead, which is going to sound like this. Sounds good to me. And we'll call this chorus gigboard. All right, it's going to show up right there. And while you're making the rig, if you want to go ahead and assign it a color, you can do that as well. Let's make this orange. So that way all your overdrive rigs are orange, maybe your clean rigs are blue, and maybe your ambient rigs are purple. Whatever you want to do to kind of keep track of everything. We'll go back here and assign that to blue. It was light blue, but now I made it darker blue. All right. So now we're going from the verse. Then we can go to the chorus. All right, great. I like that sound, but let's just add a little bit of reverb here, and we'll do some room love. And now we're going to go to a bridge section here, and I'm not really sure what I want to do with it yet. Let's just make it really, let's go super 80s on this thing, and go black duo with some chorus, and we'll do some reverb and hall ambient. And let's go just a little bit of delay here. Alright, so we have to set our output a little bit. Oh, here's an area where you can actually change the arrow to go to more parameters. I knew there was one in there somewhere, okay? And let's actually turn on the vibrato. Turn that on. We'll turn down the intensity and the speed just a little bit. And this is going to be called our bridge, like so. And then on our last one, we're going to go back to our chorus, and we're going to say save new rig, and this is going to be solo gigboard. We're now in the solo, so we're going to go down to delay, and just for fun, we're going to do a tape echo, and we'll do a 300. Alright, changing keys. And that sounds good. And since we're basing that off of a previous rig that we've already gain staged, we don't have to go and do that again, which is really fun. Alright, so now let's actually put in an air filter. And we'll do our dot cock. And this is what that's going to sound like right here. Alright, fun. So now we've organized 4 more rigs, but in the context of a song. So we got a verse, a chorus, a bridge, and a solo. Now, depending on your set list, you can make 4 different rigs per song and be like, alright, this is, you can abbreviate your song titles or make them acronyms, whatever you want to do. So that way you can have the song title and the song section within the name of the rig, and the next time you need rigs for that song, you just find the rigs and put them in your set list in whatever order that you want, and now you have a relatively organized set list that has all the sounds that you need. So now let's say I want to get back to the previous 4 rigs. I just hold down the second switch. You can see it goes from clean, rhythm, lead to wet. I'm going to hold down the third switch and it goes back to verse, chorus, bridge, and solo. Alright, so this has been an example of Rig's View. Let's go ahead and hold down the first switch right here. And we're going to hit Stomp View. So we are still in the same set list that we were before. But now we're going to see stomps across the bottom. And we can't really get to another rig until we go back to View, back to Rig. We choose something different. We hold View again and we hit Stomp. Alright, so it's probably like a 5-second turnaround from the time you want to go from Stomp View back to Rig View and Rig View back to Stomp View, or maybe you're using scenes or whatever you're doing, okay? But in this case, we're going to say, alright, I'm going to go to hardware assign and take out the amp and cab, and tape echo and reverb are on the 3rd and 4th switches right here. And we can go in and be like, alright, what else do we have available? We can put in the air filter. We can assign that to that switch. And there's really nothing else in here that we would need to do. Alright, so what if you want to have just one rig for just a quick setup kind of thing, and you want to have a few different scenes and the option to have maybe 2 stomps at the same time, okay? So we're actually going to make another rig here. We're just going to say new rig, and let's go in and put in some elements. And let's use some presets that I've already made. Deluxe amplifier. We'll check our output. Alright, so it could be a little bit more than what we have it now. Let's add in some reverb. And we'll add in our delay. Alright, let's add in a few overdrives here. Let's do a tube screamer. And we'll add in a DC distort. Actually, let's add in the anxiety overdrive. We'll do a LCD high gain. Have to bring that down, maybe bring that down, and so on. We'll change the color of that. Let's add in some modulation here. Let's go to a tremolo. We'll do a dock trim. I don't like that color. Alright, there's that. We'll do one before. Let's do a flange. Simple. Alright, very good. This is good enough for now. So we'll go ahead and save the rig. Scene Gigboard. Alright, so let's go ahead and start building some scenes here. And we're going to ... hardware assign. And just like I said before, we have the toggles and we have the scene option for each block, okay? So scene 1, let's just make this a plain amp and cab with a little bit of reverb and no delay, no tremolo, no anxiety drive, no tube screamer, no flange. And let's actually make this clean, the flange one, because that'd be a good one to do. We'll make it purple, and we can say FL clean. And then the next one, we'll make this amp and cab on, reverb on, delay, tremolo, external amp none, and anxiety drive off, green JRC off, and flange off. And then we'll edit it to be yellow, like that. And then we'll make this one be amp and cab on, reverb on. Let's do a little anxiety overdrive with the flange as well. Tremolo off, delay off, external cab none, and green JRC off. All right, now what happens if you keep things at no change? If you have that setting on some of the effects blocks and you go from one scene to the next, whatever state that effects block was in on the previous scene, that's also going to be the same state of the next scene. All right, so let's say we had anxiety drive be no change. Well, as soon as we engage that pedal in the scene, it's going to stay on within the scene until we actually go and physically turn it off. Okay, so that's what no change means. And we'll keep that scene green, and we'll do the last one, and this will be delay, reverb, cab, amp, anxiety drive, green JRC, and tremolo off and flanger off. All right, this is going to be our lead scene. This is going to be our FL dirt, and this one is our trim clean. All right, so that's good for that. So now when we go back, we can see that we have our flange clean on. Then we can go to our tremolo clean. Adjust that just a little bit. There we go. Then we have our flange dirt. Alright, great. Then let's say we go to our lead patch. And you can make those 4 scenes do whatever you want, depending on what effects blocks are in your rig. Now let's go ahead and do this a second time and say scene 2 Gigboard. And we're actually going to make one of these switches to where it's going to turn on and off a certain effect. So we'll go back to our hardware assign. And let's make the tremolo scene be our green JRC, for instance. All right. So what this means now is I can be in a scene and I can also turn on and off a block within the full rig. So I may not be in the scene originally because right now the green JRC is off. But if I just hit the second switch, it'll turn it on. Then I can go back to the same scene and it'll turn that switch off because it's not on currently in that scene. So the only scene that the JRC is on is in the lead scene. And if I want to turn that off temporarily while I'm in that scene, I can still do that. All right. So it's just a little added functionality that you can do while using scenes, but still have the option to access an effects block within your rig. And you just have a little bit extra flexibility. Okay. So now let's see where these showed up within the rig itself. And we can see that we still got clean, rhythm, lead, wet, verse, chorus, bridge, solo. Then at the bottom we have scene, gigboard, and then scene 2 gigboard. So each new rig that we create automatically shows up at the bottom of our rig list. All right, so now let's say that we have, 20 or so different rigs within your set list. How can we move those around and put them in different orders? Well, if we go back to our set list screen, you can see that we have the ... We can hit the pencil. And then here's our clean, rhythm, lead, wet, verse, chorus, bridge, solo, and scene 2. So let's just say, for instance, that I want to go up here and I want to move my wet down and replace it with the bridge. All right, so now I got verse, chorus, bridge, wet, solo. And that's just going to allow different things to show up on the switches here. So I'm going to go into my Gigboard Ultimate, go back to View, and go to Rig. And now we see that we have chorus, bridge, wet, solo. I can go to previous bank. It's going to give me my clean rhythm lead verse. Next bank. And then next bank again. And there's our last two rigs right there. Now these rigs have scenes in them, but I can't see the scene because I'm in rigs view. So I can still select the rig that I want. Alright, which is totally fine because you don't always have to use multiple different rigs within a song. So if you get to the part of the set list where like, alright, here's the part of the set list where I can just utilize some scenes and not have to switch between rig to rig. You can just go to View, hit Stomp, and then there's your scenes across the bottom here. So I can hit Trim. Alright, and that's all well and good. I can go back to my View and hit Rig. And there's my second scene. I can hit View again, hit Stomp, and now I got my stomps and scenes across the bottom again. So I got my lead right here. I can turn off my JRC. Alright, very cool. And if I want to go back to my rig, I can just hold down the View button, hit Rig. I can bank back to some other rigs that I want to get to, and here's some clean stuff. Here's my rhythm. And here's my lead. Alright, so you can get around to different areas of the gig board. You just gotta think ahead a little bit and utilize the switches that you have to create the workflow within the set list that you want. Alright, let's go ahead and look at the hands-free mode and how that works on the gig board. So hands-free mode is best used when you're in Stomp view, and because you do have your stomps across the bottom. So let's just say, for instance, that we're going to add in our delay here, and we're going to turn our amp, let's just make it the chorus. All right, so we technically have two choruses, but that's fine for now. And we're just going to hold, and you can see that we have the parameters up and down. Okay, we can choose this one for the next parameter, or we can hold for previous. So this one switch is doing two different functions. So the next parameter is going to be our depth, but we can also hold to go back to our rate. All right, so it's kind of cool. I can just keep hitting next to go to the different options here. And I'm going to actually go back, and I'm going to change the mix width a little bit. Now you can push and hold, and it'll scroll through the parameters a lot faster. And then we got next slot, which is going to be your air delay. So you can see that we can access that. So your effects blocks don't actually have to be assigned to a switch to access them in hands-free mode. You can just go to the next slot and it'll keep accessing the different options here. Okay, so you got cab, output, input gain, which is really cool. Input gain. All right, amp volume, chorus rate, air delay, and so forth. So you can literally access all the parameters and effects blocks within a rig just by using the hands-free mode. And if you want to exit out, you just press and hold the 4th switch, and now you're back into Stomp view. Okay. All right, let's go into view and go to rigs, and let's go previous. Let's go to our clean patch here. All right, so we got clean. And now we're going to go ahead and look at our looper. But once again, we can't do that while we're in rigs view. So we have to go back to our Stomp, access the looper, and now we're going to just loop something out. So let's see what we can do here. Alright, so you saw what I had to do there, because you can't access these functions if you're in rigs or setlist view. You have to be in Stomp view, otherwise the middle 2 switches are going to only be used for the bang up and down. Now we can remedy that by going to our global settings and go 4 rigs, no hold, and just turn it off. Alright, so with the alternate rig view off, we do have the previous and next bank options on the 3rd and 4th switches, and we can still access the looper within rigs view, which is really, really cool, but we're losing the functionality of the middle 2 switches being able to bank up or down, and we can't see 4 rigs at a time anymore. We can only see 2 rigs at a time. So it does further limit us as far as how we can move things across the 4 switches. But that's just something that you mainly need to worry about probably when you're practicing at home and not so much in a live performance. So if you're going to be looping in a live performance, you probably want to get something more like the looper board, which is also made by Headrush. And that's just a way better option than trying to loop and then switch between your rigs and your stomps, and it could get messy really fast, okay? But I can't exit out of that. Then if I want to go back to my global settings and turn the Alt Rig Footswitch View on, now I got my next bank and my previous bank on the middle 2 switches right here. All right. All right, and last but not least of the 4 switch options, we have switch 4, which has the tuner, and it also has the tap tempo for our delays and other modulation time-based effects. So if we hold down switch 4, you can see that we have our tap tempo right here, which we can tap that in, and we can tune, which I probably need to do. All right, we can unmute our signal. And you'll probably want to do that when you're in performance mode and you want to actually tap the tempo of your song without also muting your signal, because when you press exit, you can still play. So you can still access the tap tempo, it's just not as convenient as having it on a separate switch like the pedal board does. And then when you're ready to tune again, you just hit mute, you can tune, do whatever you need to do, unmute, you can exit, and then you're back to playing. You can hit the tuner again. Let's say you're switching to a new song, you want to change the tempo, you just tap that in, and now you set the tempo to the new song. Alright, so now that we're done looking at the top of the unit and understanding how we can build rigs and organize them into set lists, let's go ahead and look at the back of the unit now and look at the ins and outs and some of the other functions that we can access on the back. Alright, so how I've been listening to myself so far in this video is I've been using the phone's output, which is on the back of the unit here, and I have a regular TRS cable going to a dual mono cable. And what that allows me to do is free up the outputs of the gig board, and I'm using my left output going straight to my Zoom Q8 camera. Then I can adjust my master volume to set the level going to the camera, but I really don't have a separate output level for the phone's output. Everything's derived from the master. So if I turn this down, it's going to bring down the volume of the gig board, which is also in turn going to bring down the volume of my FR 108 speaker. So if I want to hear the speaker louder, I just have to set my master where I need it to go to the front of house or my camcorder, and then I have to actually turn the volume controls on the back of the FR 108 in order to get that setting right, whether I'm playing on stage or if I'm just jamming here in the room while also recording a video. And if you've looked at the pedal board, you will notice that there is a separate phone's volume on top. And I kind of wish they did that here. There's a little bit of space right here. You can add some knobs pretty easily. But I think my main suggestion would be to go into global settings and maybe on a third page have a headphone volume parameter that you can just adjust with your finger, or you can use the push enter knob on the top unit to adjust that volume. There's surely there's got to be a way to do that. Alright, so the next feature we're going to look at is the expression and the toe. And what we're going to use for those is I have a TRS cable, okay, that is 1/4 inch. I'm going to go 1/4 inch out of the expression, and I also have the Mission Engineering Aero expression pedal. So I'm going to plug that into the first input there on the side. And for the toe, I just have a TS cable, which is a unbalanced cable. I'm going to go ahead and plug that into the toe switch, and then plug that into the second input on the Aero. So that's what that looks like. You got the TRS and you got the TS right there. So now, if I put a volume pedal in the chain, let's go to expression, volume, and we'll just do default. You can see if I double tap, I am able to control the volume on the gig board. So that's pretty cool. And now let's say I go back and I'm going to actually insert wall pedal. And I have a toe switch now. So you can see that by hitting the toe, let me do this on the camera. So I'm going to hit the toe here. I can switch from, so there's A and there's B. Okay, so it's pretty easy to go back and forth like that. So let me go ahead and pick up my guitar here and do a little bit of playing. You can hear what that sounds like. I am on a wet patch here, so let me just turn that off. So here's my volume pedal. Let me actually turn the reverb and delay back on. Alright, very cool. And if I hit the toe switch, that's going to turn on my wah pedal. Alright, that's pretty fun. Let's save that, and let's go to a solo patch here. Now I do have the air filter in here, but let's just go ahead and add in a shined wall. So now we can control the wah pedal with our foot. Alright, pretty cool. Now, I don't have a B in here, so if I just click the toe, it'll turn the wall off. Then if I click the toe again, it'll turn it back on. Alright, but let's say, for example, that I actually want to have something on the B switch. So I'm going to go in here, and let's say I want to change the mix time of the reverb. Alright, so check this out. Notice how I go from 0 mix all the way to 100%. Check this out. And let's do something else here. So I'm going to choose my range. I'm not going to have it go all the way down to 0%. And I am going to go to advanced. And I'm going to assign another parameter here. Go to reverb, and I'm going to adjust the time. Alright, so check this out. Go to range. And let's do that. And let's do maybe 50%. Let's just see what happens here. So it's changing it from 9 seconds all the way up to 2 seconds, which is not bad. Let's make it a little bit more apparent. 75%. So it's going from basically 1 second to almost 5 seconds. So check this out. Alright, so we basically have the B switch affecting the reverb, and I'll switch back over to A. Click that off of advanced, and now I'm back to the wall. Back to B. And the time didn't change. Let's see what happened there. Classic. Alright, so something's happening to where I can't really change between A and B if I'm in advanced mode, but I can do it when I'm in the classic mode. So it does limit you in the amount of parameters you can do, but if you only need one parameter per rig and you want to adjust something on the reverb but don't really need a wah pedal, then that's just a compromise you're going to have to make. And you also notice that the reverb actually turned off, which is interesting because you are going between the shine wall and the reverb. All right, so that's another thing you have to think about as well. Not a big deal though. So now let's look at what happens when we use the send and return of the effects loop into a real amplifier. So what I have here is 3 cables, and I do have one color coded and the other I know just has a sleeve and the other one is just a generic cable. And it's the same way on the other side as well. So I've had this snake cable for a very long time, and we have identical ends just with, you know, on the opposite end of the cable. So what I'm going to do now is how to run the 4 cable method is, first of all, let's just go ahead and make a new rig, and we're going to actually insert an effects loop into the chain. What that's going to do is tell the Gigboard, hey, we are connecting the effects send and return of the Gigboard to something else, and we want to actually pass signal to the amplifier or whatever else you're connecting to, okay? So I am going to take my guitar cable and plug it into the input of my Gigboard. And I'm going to take my send. I'm going to plug this in here. And then I'm going to take my return cable and plug that into here. And then I'm going to take the green end and plug that into my output of the Gigboard. All right. So now on the other end, I'm going to take the cable that I use for the send on the Gigboard and plug that into the input of the amp. And take the send of the amp and plug that into the return of the Gigboard, and then the output of the Gigboard into the return of the amplifier. Alright, so now I should be able to hear volume coming out of the amplifier. Alright, so now what we can actually do is just go into Stomp View here, and let's just add in a few effects. Alright, so I can go to my reverb. Let's add in some room love. Alright, let's add in some quick delay. Like so. Alright, that's how you do that. And then let's add in some overdrive. Like a tube screamer should do it. Alright, here we go. Alright, so we got the 4 cable method set up, and now I actually want to use the external amp switch to control the channels on the amplifier itself. So let me show you how that works. And I'm going to use this cable that we were using with the expression pedal, and I'm not going to use that for this section here. So I'm just going to go external amp like that, and then take this cable and I'm going to plug it into the foot switch of the amplifier. So now we have the option to change channels on the amp and also use 4 cable method at the same time. So how we're going to actually change channels on the amp is we're going to go into the hardware sign, and we can see that external amp is set to either none, or we can have tip, or we can have ring, or we can have both. Alright, so for the blue guitar amp 1, we actually have a channel switch, a boost, and a reverb. Now the reverb is not going to be turned on and off by the external amp option, but we can change the channels and either turn on or off the boost. So when it's set to none, we're just going to be on a nice clean channel. And then when we switch it over to tip, we can see by the GoPro camera here that it switches over to one of the other 3 channels, which in this case is set to vintage. And if I go to ring, it's going to go back to the clean tone but turn on the boost. And if we have it set to both, it's going to change the amp channel and also engage the boost at the same time. So what we're going to do with this, we're actually going to say, all right, I want this to be a clean sound. So I'm going to save this new rig, and we're going to call this amp 1 clean. And for the external amp, we're going to set that to none. Okay, because none is always going to be clean. All right, so this is what that sounds like. All right, now for our second rig, we're just going to save new rig, and then we're going to call this amp 1 channel 2. Go back to hardware assign, and we're going to set it to tip. We can see on the GoPro camera that it did change the channel. This is what this is going to sound like with the delay off. Alright, that's pretty fun. Let's make the next rig be amp 1 CLB. So it's going to be back to clean, and we're going to engage the boost. So that's going to be set to rig or ring. And this is what that sounds like. Let's turn the delay back on. Alright, save new rig. Amp 1 channel 2 boost. Alright, so hardware assign, and we're going to set it to both. And now we get the drive channel and the boost at the same time. That's what the functionality of the external amp is. And within each rig, let's go back to rig view here. And we're going to bank. So there we have our amp 1, which is clean. Amp channel 2. We're going to bank over. Here's clean with boost. And channel 2 and boost. So within each rig, you can have whatever effects you want, whatever amp channel you want, and the worlds are wide open between using digital effects and also analog, tube, overdrive, and or just whatever amp that you own, okay? So that's the main ins and outs of the Gigboard that I think you should know. There's a lot more things that you probably could do, but as a new user of the Gigboard, and maybe just a beginner in digital effects in the first place, I wanted you to have a good foundation on the unit itself and all the ins and outs and what is possible with the Gigboard. So if you've purchased one of these for maybe a bass guitar rig, maybe you're the second guitar player in a rock band and you just need a few rigs at your disposal and you really don't need to do a lot of switching, then really the Gigboard is perfect for you. And I like using it on my desk when I'm recording. It's small, it doesn't take up a lot of space. Most of the time I don't need an expression pedal for those recording situations. And when I do, I just go ahead and connect my Arrow from Mission Engineering and I can use it for volume or wah or changing parameters in real time with my foot, or whatever I need to do at the time. I will be going over how to use the Gigboard and Headrush pedalboard as a recording device in a later video. But for this, like I said, I just want to give you, as a new user to the Gigboard, just some basic knowledge of the unit and what is possible. And I thank you for watching. Go ahead and check out the timestamps in the description, and you can skip around this video whenever you need to, if you need to go back over a certain part, and just rewatch things and get a better grasp on the concepts that I'm trying to teach you in the video. So I am Dr. McFarland. I will see you in the next video. Keep rocking.